Welcome to Phoenix 76 Tech Talk. My name is Amy, and I'm here with John and Mark, and we are all part of the hiring process in the tech world. So, Mark, why don't you tell us a little about yourself as a hiring manager?
Good evening, Amy. My name is Mark. I work for a major airline carrier. I'm the manager of their field service division and their advanced technical support team that supports domestic and international field service teams.
And John?
Hey, Amy. Hey, Mark. My name is John. How's everybody doing? I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader that helps multinational organizations achieve their environmental, social governance, and diversity and inclusion goals. And I have a background as a technical recruiter.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about you as a technical recruiter. Interested in the applicant tracking systems. I know they often play a significant role in screening resumes. I'm wondering if you have some key tips for optimizing resumes. Maybe there are some common pitfalls or mistakes that candidates should avoid when they're crafting their resumes for tech positions.
Yeah, that's a good one, Amy. I'm going to go behind the scenes for a second. Because I think oftentimes we craft a resume off of the job description. But what we may or may not understand is that recruiters, or in my experience, technical recruiters, when we are trying to fill positions, we're doing something called a Boolean search. And a Boolean search is, I'll give everyone a brief example. If I'm looking for a software engineer whose primary language is Java, depending on where they live, what else they need to do, I'm going to go into my applicant tracking system and I'm going to create kind of like, I guess you could say it in a non-technical way, like an algorithm that says software plus engineer plus Java in Texas. And I'm going to add anything else I can. And what I'm doing in that Boolean search is pulling things off of the candidates' resumes. So the reason why I share that and give you that behind the scenes view is we're not just going through and looking at a database of resumes. We're actually trying to pinpoint the exact resume for the position that we're working on. So when you're crafting your resume for these applicant tracking systems, do it in terms of the career that you want and don't worry so much about the applicant tracking system. So if you're going down the path of software engineering, going down the path of project management, whatever the case may be, understand some of those core competencies, have those on your resume, but only if you can speak to them. Because if you can't speak to anything that's on your resume, you're doing yourself a disservice.
That's great advice. Well, let me ask you, staying with you. So we have recruiting agencies and we have recruiters that live kind of in-house that are employed by the company. Can you tell me the difference between the two and how maybe they interact and how maybe one versus the other, what our goals are with working with either of those?
Absolutely. So I'll say talent acquisition or in-house recruiters, their responsibility is everything inside the organization that they work for. So they're going to work with Mark. They're going to work with Mark's peers. They're going to work with other leaders inside the organization to fill all of the full-time positions within that particular organization. An agency recruiter, meaning someone that is a technical recruiter at a staffing company, the difference is they have access to all the positions in the area that they're responsible for at various organizations, right? However, in many cases, that agency recruiter, they're going to be more focused on contract and contract to hire positions. That's another conversation because I know some folks might have questions about that. And I would just say, small plug, the gig economy is booming. And in fact, in my experience, I would say about 85% of the positions that I have supported have been contract and contract to hire. And the men and women that I've built relationships with, they're thriving by starting out that way and sometimes doing that their entire career. So those are the main differences. You have full time versus contract and contract to hire. Why a company might work with a staffing company is they might need support. Sometimes it's very challenging to fill the positions full time. Sometimes you want to open it up and say, hey, maybe I want to try Amy out on a contract basis before we hire her full time. Maybe inside that organization, because of funding or internal circumstances, that is the best route. And it's an opportunity for candidates to get their foot in the door. When you think about the resume, an internal recruiter, when they work closely with Mark, they're listening to what Mark says as is an agency recruiter. But that's just their scope. It's more limited. An agency recruiter is going to say, hey, you are employing me for a reason. So now I'm going to act as a sports agent, if you will, for the candidate population and make sure they get their resumes tight. And I'm going to ask Mark more questions rather than just working off of a job description. I'm going to leverage my industry knowledge. I'm going to leverage my local market analysis, what I have about the candidate pool that exists outside of the talent acquisition professionals' purview, meaning I might know folks that are in the state, the city, the nation, and I'm going to help Mark understand the type of candidate that exists for him. So there's just some subtle differences. To package that, I would just say full-time hiring in-house, working at one company in-house. Contract to hire, and full-time from an agency recruiter that works in the staffing industry. And that's the main difference.
I love that. And I have had actually quite a few experience with contract work. And I will say, going through an agency recruiter, they have so much more access to many more roles than just that one role that you might be looking for. So they can sell you to a lot of different companies as well. Let's talk to Mark. Mark, tell me about the kinds of things that hiring managers are looking at when they're looking at candidates and their potential for growth and learning when they're making hiring decisions for tech roles.
Thank you, Amy. As a hiring manager, we're always looking to the candidate himself, right? So one of the things I always ask is this: bring your authentic self to the position or to the interview. We want to get to know you. We want to know what your venue is about, what your aspirations are. Then we can cater to your skill sets. Believe it or not, most jobs are going to train you to do the work the way they want it done, not how you were trained.
Right.
So we may have to make sure first that, when we're prioritizing that, are you trainable? Are you willing to get outside of your mold set and learn the way we do things? So when we're thinking about potential growth and we're thinking about future opportunities, I always tell individuals, bring your authentic self to the table. And as John has already mentioned, don't put something on your resume that you can't talk about, which shows me that you're not prepared or that you're fluffing your resume just to say that you have some experience in that field that you've never done. It can show that you're not trustworthy or that you'll cut corners in the future. So in a nutshell, really, be authentic, be professional, and then your talent and your skills and your experience, we attribute and we cater to those skill sets to grow them. So that's really what we look for when we're hiring managers.
And following down this track, tell me about behavioral interviews. I know that those are also can be common in tech interviews.
Mm-hmm.
How do candidates effectively prepare for those kind of behavioral questions and demonstrate their problem-solving abilities and teamwork skills?
I always tell individuals, bring a story. This is a life journey. This is a life event. No one's perfect. I need to know someone's been through a few things so that I can actually cater to understanding my workload on them. If someone can tell me, yeah, there was a time when some code to a computer, it took down the network for 3 hours, but I was able to work with my manager and get it back up. It was a learning curve. That's a behavioral question. That lets me know that even through tough times or difficult or inaccurate decisions, you can recover. And I'll see that as a skill set to say that person can work in my organization because I work in that field where I can make changes that impact, and I got to be able to, recover fastly. So just like I said, behavioral skills, emotional intelligence, they need to have a story. We need to see what you're made of. If you come to the table and says, well, I've never experienced that, or really that's never happened to me, I'm least likely to say that you're ready for this position because all jobs require some type of movement. Not all jobs are positive, and not all jobs have the same stress level. If you've never been in that experience before, this could be very shocking to you as an individual. And this may not be a good outcome for you or me either. So always bring a story.
Yes, I love that. In behavioral interviews, they're really about the how you do things, not about the what
Mhm.
you do. So
Right.
think about how you are going about solving problems. How are you going about maybe resolving small conflicts that you may run
Mhm.
into?
Yeah.
So that's really great advice. Um, so John, I we've talked a little bit about the behavioral, kind of the soft skills. Those technical interviews in the tech industry can be rigorous and challenging. What do you think are
Mhm.
some of the common types of technical interview questions that candidates can expect to come across?
Yeah, I think it varies. So this might be an interesting take. When I used to interview candidates a lot, the first question or one of the first questions that I would often ask is, I want you to explain your favorite hobby or pastime to me. And be like, what? Why do you care about that? This is technical. Just do it. Just humor me. I want to hear you explain your favorite hobby or pastime. And nine times out of ten, what I would find is they would be very enthusiastic and excited about what they were sharing with me. And then right after they finish answering that, I would say, okay, now I'm going to flip the script to technical. Keep that same level of energy because it shouldn't feel so monotone. Like, I want to know if you actually love and care about what you're doing. Does it sound rehearsed? Are you passionate? Do you know why the business is trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do and how your role is impacted by that? If you don't, I want you to go find that out. I want you to seek it. So really what it is a lot of critical thinking type of questions. I want to see how enthusiastic you are about what it is you do. And I believe that a lot of the technical interviews that I've had the privilege of sitting in on the agency side, partnering with hiring leaders like Mark, I've had that privilege and listening to them. A lot of them are behavioral questions. What would you do if? I think the most important thing is whatever the position is that you're applying for, you need to truly understand what it is that person or that skill set is responsible for. So as an example, a software engineer, a core software engineer is going to understand what object oriented programming is. And if you're listening or watching this, Google that if you don't know what it is. But if you're a if you're a software engineer and you don't understand what object oriented programming is, you need to be prepared to answer some questions about all of the components within object oriented programming. If you are someone that is in the Scrum field or the product field and you don't understand the difference between Scrum, iterative, you don't know what Kanban is, and all these different concepts that go into that role, you need to be prepared to answer technical questions about that, about the job. If you are in the job right now and you're interviewing for a job that's similar or the same at another company, maybe because it will give you higher pay or different exposure, be prepared to talk about the skills that you have and how you're applying it to the job that you're currently doing and the value that you would add to that organization. You're still selling yourself. You're not just talking about your technical know-how because depending on the role, it might not matter if you can help them achieve the strategic objectives that that new company has. So that's a lot of the advice that I give is it's all about how you think. You can be the most technical person in the world. But I used to say this to software engineers all the time because I spent a lot of time with them is do you understand why you are coding what you are coding? Because in my experience, I would say if you don't, that's okay. But as your partner, as your sports agent, the analogy that I used earlier, I can't put you in front of Mark for this position. We're gonna have to find another position for you because you need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, then speak to it.
Probably the most important question that you can ask as a BA, as a business analyst, as you're going in trying to code, is why. I would agree 100%. Um, okay, so staying on that, can you tell me how HR assesses like a candidate's problem solving abilities, especially in the context of technical challenges or coding assessments?
Yeah, I'll give you the perspective again from a staffing agency, former technical recruiter. Something that I would do is I would never put a candidate in my local market, right? If the candidate was local, I would never put them in front of Mark, the hiring leader, if I haven't met that person yet. So something that I would always do is I would have a conversation with the candidates, and then I would meet them for coffee or bring them into my local office and have more of a mock interview, get to know you conversation with them to assess their critical thinking skills. Why are you even interested in this job? Is it just another one of the who knows how many positions that you're applying for? Why do you care? And that's a different experience sometimes because, again, earlier we were talking about the difference between an agency recruiter in the staffing industry versus an in-house recruiter or talent acquisition at one company. It's my responsibility to sell you, speak on your behalf as your agent to Mark. So I'm having that mock interview conversation with that person because I would have already met with Mark to understand his job requisition. I would have already asked Mark, hey, when you're looking at this job description that you have, I got to be honest, Mark, there's a lot on this. If you were going to interview someone today, what are the most important things that you're looking to pull out of this job requisition that you see on this person's resume to say, you know what, I want to give Amy a shot because I have 25 things on my job description. She has these three. And if someone can speak to these three, they're going to get this job. So I would have already had that conversation with Mark. And now when I'm sitting with Amy, the candidate, I'm trying to understand her. Mark has told me about his organization. I know his leadership style. I understand his team. I've asked him a lot of questions about that. I've done my own research about his organization and him and his team. Now I'm sitting with Amy and I'm trying to see, is this a fit? And that's how the conversation works is, Amy, tell me about your skills, your goals. What is it that you want to do? What are you passionate about? Before I even get to that job requisition, I need to talk to Amy. Why, right? Why this company? What do you know about this company? Do you have anyone that you know that works there? And I'm listening to see if you say anything about the company that Mark is at, anything that's impactful, anything that's valuable, or anything about his job requisition before we even get into it. Because then I can come back to you, Amy, and say, all right, I've listened to you for the last 20 minutes. Based off of what you said you want to do and what you're currently doing, I think this position with Mark is a good fit for you. So I know it's a different take than how you asked the question, but from my experience being in the staffing industry, being that liaison, right? You talked about business analysis a couple minutes ago. I'm that liaison between the candidate's experience and Mark's experience so that hopefully I can make a perfect marriage.
Yeah, and I love that. And so what I'm hearing is that interview prep is going to be really important. But once they meet with you, they should be asking some key questions. What are the top three things? I mean, if you don't give it away, they should just be asking anyway, right? That's what I'm hearing. So, Mark, I guess we could probably close out with this. Can you talk a little bit about the significance? We talked about gig economy. So, kind of bringing that around, the significance of candidates' personal projects or contributions to open source communities and demonstrating their skills and passion for technology.
Thank you, Amy. Just capitalizing on what John said as well. Is important in today's technology field. There are just so many social hubs and media platforms that they can operate and generate their talent on. It's really a benefit to them to actually do that. It shows their skill set. It shows their desire, their passion to be able to do that type of work. The only reason why I say it's more of a 50-50 on the fence type ideology is because the business may not always track to those social platforms. So your corporate America may, but not all mid-level organizations may track to the social platforms as a communicative way of identifying your social skill set. So I think it's imperative that you, one, be able to bring the talents in both facets. One, you have a portfolio of your social platform work that can show your coding skills, can show your project experience, and through those social media hubs, you can track your independence and your desire to be in that skill set. But I think also you must cater to the business side as well. You got to show some strengths in that area, and you've really got to demonstrate a passion on that side to where you can say, hey, this is what I bring to the table, but I also have a background here that you can explore. If this is technology you're looking to go down the pathway with, I'm already in that field and already have some background in it. So I think that brings a level of aptitude that can really grasp the company to say, hey, not only is he proficient in what we're doing now, he's already shown some skill set in other social venues that are going to really be beneficial for him in the long term. So that's why I say it's got to be a 50-50. You got to be, it's not half in, half out. You got to be half on the social side. You got to be also half on this is what the company requires. So it takes a venue of both in order for you to be successful.
And I hear what I hear as a theme is we're looking for your passions. What do you love? And when you go out there and you're building your
Yep.
own anything, it speaks to what you love, right? Because you're going to
Right.
do things that you really enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so.
Amy,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. If we have one more minute, I want to go back to resumes really quick,
Yes.
because I know we touched on it. So if we can just take 1 minute, I want to give an example of, in my experience of being in this industry over the last decade, 2 types of hiring leaders that I've encountered, and then 2 types of resumes. I would love to leave the listeners with that. So, close relationship of mine. We're still friends to this day, even though I haven't helped him fill his business since 2017 due to both of us moving into different roles. But he used to rip up resumes in front of me and in front of the candidates. And sometimes folks would get spooked by that. His main driver was, hey, I know John Priority looked at the resume. Don't care. I want to have a conversation with you for the next hour. And sometimes that would throw people off. Sometimes they would say, thank you. Now I can just have a conversation with somebody. So my point is, there are still leaders today that act, they might not literally rip it up like he used to, but they might just move it to the side and say, I just want to talk to Mark today. I just want to talk to Amy. Let's just have a conversation. There are other leaders that they're extremely focused on what's on that resume. And that entire interview might be all about that resume. You also might have a third option. You might have some people that are a blend of that. So I want to make sure people understand the types of leaders that you'll encounter. Now, on the resume, I'm going to give you 2 examples. If you don't have any professional experience, well, let me back up for a second. Bottom line, I said this already, I'm going to double click on it. Don't put it on your resume if you can't speak to how you have actually used that tool. And when I say use it, I'm not talking about you went on YouTube and you watched the video and took notes on it. How have you actually used that tool? If you haven't, don't put it on there. So here's the thing. If you don't have any professional experience, but you have certifications, or maybe you're self-taught, you have a GitHub, some sort of portfolio, something that's freelance, projects, whatever the case may be. If you had the access and opportunity to go to school and you completed a capstone project, final exam, assignment, whatever, put all of those things on there, because those are things that you can speak to and talk about the skills that you have. Now, if you are a professional that already has experience, it's called different things. Some people call it key skills. Some people say objectives, tools and technologies, whatever it is. This is my personal opinion. I don't love that section at all, because what I've found over the last 10 years is it is a fluff section. And a lot of times people will say, oh, generative AI is important right now. Perfect. I just downloaded and paid for ChatGPT 4 and I'm learning how to train my own GPT. So I'm going to throw it on there. I don't know if I would, if you can't really speak to LLMs and you really don't understand data analytics and insights, right? So I don't love that section. I love the professional experience section. So rather than putting all those tools and technologies up top, maybe you put a couple, tailor it to the job. You know what Mark cares about, put some of that up there. The majority goes under your professional experience. So at job A, city A, everything that I did, the tools and technologies that I used. Job B, same thing. Job C, same thing. And try to keep that to 1 page. So again, I just thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mark. I wanted to close with that because I know we briefly touched on the resume, but I think those are some powerful takeaways, because a lot of times folks don't know what to put, what not to put, a leader's style when it comes down to the resume.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, what I keep hearing is bring your authentic self. This is not one of those fake it till you make it, put what you know and speak to that. I love that.
Yes.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark and John. It has absolutely been my pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you.